The river is giving us something, right? What we can give back. So this is the real question.
Welcome to a new episode of Flowcast. Today we're meeting Ilaria Boffa, a poet and musician based in Italy. We'll talk with her about her composition for our project, which we'll listen to at the end of this episode. Hello and welcome, Ilaria. Do you want to tell us something about yourself and what you do?
I am a poet and sound recordist. I'm based in Italy, and I work with eco-poetry. So my intention is really writing about the natural world, the environment, but not in the way that you need to understand why there are issues with climate, but it's more about observation and then, describing the world around me and the way I interact as a human with the other species or elements in nature. I tend to write about what happens to me in the context that I live. I live close to a river, the Bacchiglione River. And at the same time, I also record sounds. So this is what I do.
Which is very aligned with the scope of this project. What did you like most about the project and what drawn you to it?
As soon as I read Flow, I understood that it was a project about water. And so I started reading more and learning. And the fact that you were trying to work on the story, we could say, of a river was really something that I wanted to contribute to. Because also I am working with a river or with rivers. So I just wanted to go into this flow and see how I could just maybe write something that was connected to the story of the Lech, also connected to my own experience. And so when I listened to the pieces that you made available, and especially the segment 13 that I chose, I thought, well, this is for me. And also because I was already collaborating with an artist, anthropologist, and researcher who actually works with rivers. And so she studies rivers in a very peculiar way that I try to integrate in my piece. So there were many elements that really connected me to this project.
Your segment of the river, which says was number 13. Can you remind me which one is it?
It was the hydropower station plant, and so this very powerful sound.
When you chose this section, you were given access to some material, which was, field recording, some photos, but also a time-lapse video made with satellite images. Mm-hmm. So of all of this material, what did you use? What did influence your composition?
I think all of them in a way, because the research that you and Martina shared with us was very relevant to dig deeper into the history and the story and the reality of that river. And the time lapse was so engaging, showing how the river changed over time. And this was also a way for me to embody the river, which is what I've done. When I listened to the hydropower white noise, I thought, well, this is just like the voice of the river, so powerful, conveying energy. And in this case, it's not something that maybe the river wanted, right? But rivers, since they are these beautiful, more than human beings, they give us something. But how can we reciprocate? This was also my starting point. We blocked the river Lech several times, the voice of this river, the current, the continuity of this river. And so I just wanted to give back in a way to represent the river, embodying the river and the voice of this river. So that's why then when I wrote my piece and recorded my voice, I pitched my voice to embody this beautiful water being.
The poems that you wrote were from the perspective of the river. Who's speaking there? Is it you? Is it the river?
It's the river. So I just wanted to represent this water being. So I talk in first person. That's why my voice is pitched, kind of an old lady, an old river, talking about what it means to travel over the Pleistocene moraines and moving towards the sea. And so I just wanted, again, to convey this idea that they are there before us and they were there for millions of years. And so the way that we connect with them, it's a way that we need to probably restore also not only the river, but our way to connect to them. So this was the idea, providing a voice. I took a few pieces of the research, and they are in some of my lines, talking about, the no fish pass. I call it the law, because when you put dams on a river, this is what happens. So if fish cannot pass over, then the ecosystem changes.
The fish passage was a great symbol that we found along the entire river, a symbol of one of the main topics of this project, which is the relationship between humans and nature, and the question, are humans part of the nature? So what we wanted the artist to reflect on is how can be our relationship with the river be improved? And what is the way forward from where we are now?
While you were talking, I was thinking of Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's a botanist, a researcher, also a poet. She talks a lot about our relationship with more than human beings. And she says something that I totally agree with. And it's not that we do not use the energy of a river. It's not that we are not allowed to do something on the river, a dam or something. The issue is how we reciprocate. So the river is giving us something, right? What we can give back. So this is the real question, because if there's a relationship means that I give you something and you give me maybe even only gratitude. How can we show gratitude?
There needs to be a balance.
Yes, there needs to be a balance, and stop and listening to these beings and also to us, and understand how can we really be in harmony, as you were saying. So there's this balance that we need to find.
And connectivity is like the second main topic of this project. So how the entire river is connected, and how, it's the same entity from the Tyrolean Alps in Austria all the way down to where it merges with the Danube River. And to this point, I'm very glad that the Connected Sounds initiative was started by you guys on the WhatsApp group. Some of the artists came up with this idea of connecting their segment, a voluntary initiative to share some sound snippets with everyone else, so that anyone could go into that folder, listen to the snippets, get inspired by it, and possibly even use them and integrate them in their own composition. So you did participate to that, right? Yeah.
I shared my, just an excerpt, very short, and I listened to the others, and also I listened to the field recordings that you took before and after my segment, to have the possibility to represent this connectivity or discontinuity. Because as we said, the river has been, and the voice of the river has been interrupted, in the sense that there's this voice that through dams and weirs is stopped, and then the sound increases the power and, the frequency. That's why I think that it would be wonderful to have the possibility to listen to all the pieces, in a kind of continuum.
Tell me about your process. What came first, the words or the music?
And I want to say that I'm not a musician. So to me, the first part was really research, starting from everything that you gave us. So the documents, the field recording. So I listened to this sound at almost 1 minute of this intense white noise of this hydropower station in action. And there are no variation in this. And this was very good to me. I thought that I could hear a pattern. And so this was also an idea that I wanted to convey in my composition, something that is disquieting in a way. So I started by studying and connecting with two artists because I wanted to make this piece in an organic way, even though, I could use effects, but I wanted to preserve your field recording that you took. So, because in general, I want the listener to connect to the real. So what is really there? That sound is real, is something that exists. And I connected to one violinist. Her name is Ida Di Vita. And I asked her to reproduce a natural element, and she went with the wind. And so the wind that you hear in the composition is made by a violin. And then I had conversations with Colombian Berlin-based Elisabeth Gallon-Drosde that by chance told me also, I worked on the Lech because she's an anthropologist and researcher working with rivers, and she wrote a paper about that river, and she talked about rivers as portals. So the river and the dams and weirs, just like opening an underworld or another world. And so having these conversations, then I started writing my piece. And I asked Elisabeth to provide me with her poem. And so I integrated the two. I didn't want to use my field recordings on rivers. I just wanted to have his or her voice, their voice, which is the voice of the current of the water in the hydropower station. And then I used it. I reversed that sound, that pattern, and I used it all along the composition. And then I put the sound of the violin and my recordings of my poem and Elisabeth one.
Now let's listen to Ilaria's composition, In the Arms of the Weirs.
Living between languages, between the here and there. Learning to become fluvial, finding shores to breathe on. More than a beginning or an end. The portal, the waters, dams. To remember with water is to submerge in the threshold. This is how the river becomes a practice, a way of moving, a framework for transitions in the interstices, linking us to the collective, to the territories that lie beyond, deeper, listening to the waters between the here and there becomes a space for what resists being said, a gesture of attention where meaning slips through without words, communing with the ghosts. Rivers always testify, are storytellers. This means tuning our bodies to their whispers, a hum, a vibration, an interference.
Voiced white noise, progression of pressure, spinning of turmoil. It's all you can feel in the fall. It's good to be at service, to move downwards and collect, to come a long way across the Pleistocene moraines, the edge of Alps and gravel fields, to accumulate in the arms of Weirs. But I've seen algae disappear under the law of no fish pass. I get hungrier and hungrier. I go deeper and deeper, as to search for the sticks, as to swear by her water. Way less than a good mother, my spawning grounds in degradation, my current impeded, my voice broken, a life to gauge. Flow continuity hiccups with drawn-out hisses and roars. Itself renders into a different language. It loosens and revers in reverse.
Rumore bianco con voce profonda, progressione di pressione, vorticare di rimescolio e tutto ciò che si sente nella caduta. È bello mettersi al servizio, discendere e raccogliere, venire da lontano e attraversare le morene del Pleistocene, il bordo alpino e le pianure di ghiaia, accumulare tra le braccia delle dighe. Ma ho visto alghe scomparire per la legge del no al passaggio dei pesci. Sono sempre più affamata, scavo sempre più a fondo, come a cercare Stige, come a giurare sulle sue acque. Molto meno di una buona madre, le mie zone di deposizione in degrado. La corrente ostacolata, la voce rotta, una vita calibrata. La continuità del flusso singhiozza con lunghissimi sibili e scrosci. Si autotraduce in una lingua diversa, si allenta e come inversa procede.